This is Part 2 Episode 159. When the name of Chen Zidian was heard in the Alliance's Great Stadium, all contestants from the 6 Great Temples stood up and made their salutations towards the Night Temple's guest lounge. The Demon Hunt Squad Bright Glimmer of Hope was the true pinnacle of human demon hunt squads. Chen Zidian was their captain, who had led his demon god slayers all over the continent and greatly impeded the demon god emperor with the sheer strength of their demon hunt squad. Their contribution to the Alliance was already beyond measure with contribution points. For these human legends to appear there as referees of this gathering was something absolutely no one dared raise complaints about. In fact, even now, the other members of the demon god slayers were still in demon territory, hidden beneath the surface of Modu to keep watch over the demon god emperor's activities. On the side of the mage temple, Li Jingji had a very sinister look. He naturally wouldn't have dared raise any complaints toward Chen Zidian, not on the basis of strength, but on the basis of sheer respect. Chen Zidian was possibly the elder with highest seniority in the whole Temple Alliance, so no one could raise a complaint at his holding the governmental office, and furthermore, he would surely raise a fair and just judgment. What caused Li Jingji's complexion to look unsightly was that, yesterday, he heard from Tan Wan a name that should not affect him, but was really affecting his feelings. He was back. 4 years ago he was already at the 8th step. So, could he already be a 4th divine knight for the Night Temple? If this was for real, that would add a terrible variable to this temple's great gathering. After all, at his age, he really had the best chance to rally supporters. The aged ones of the Night Temple would surely be glowing with vitality, because of his coming back. Right now, the 6 Great Temples contestants were all seated in their respective seats, about to draw lots for selecting their opponent. The non-participation of the Priest Temple made the other 180 powerhouses from the other 5 temples the only ones needing to participate in the drawing and contests. In a bit, the contestants would come to light and undergo a selection. Every chosen 2 would immediately have their match under the powerful Demon Hunter's watch. Demon Hunters could be called part of an independent system. Their great strength and enormous contributions to the Alliance made them the best possible referees. Such a pick would guarantee fairness. No one should ever play tricks in such a place. Before the contest starts, I have a matter to announce. Chen Zidian's voice resounded once again. Hearing him, the overwhelming majority of the higher-ups of the Alliance were in states of shock, including the participating ones, because they didn't hear about such an announcement beforehand at all. Chen Zidian declared, based on the ruling of the temple's great gathering, any titled Demon Hunt squad should be qualified to participate in the gathering under their squad name, and have their total points counted as well. I have received the application of a titled Demon Hunt squad. They will be participating in this gathering, based on the rules. I have given my acceptance to that. In a bit, they will be coming for the drawing of lots. This revelation raised a great commotion amongst the higher-ups from the 6 Great Temples. A demon hunt squad wanting to participate in the gathering. None of them had ever seen such a situation happen in their lives. Over the past 1,000 years, it had happened only twice or thrice at most. A demon hunt squad participating there would at most be here for the sake of training. After all, even if a titled demon hunt squad had some privileges, they were in the end limited in their numbers. How could there be a demon hunt squad wanting to participate in this temple's great gathering? Were they only here to polish their training? And in the Temple Alliance, the titled demon hunt squads were only just a few. So just which one was taking part? Chen Zidian continued, for the sake of reaching the minimum team count formally acceptable, this demon hunt squad was specially allowed to welcome other demon hunters, reaching the total count of 10, and none of their member exceed 100 years of age, as per the rules. This demon hunt squad's name is Bright Glimmer of Hope. A bright glow landed upon the Night Temple's lounge, shining in the area right between the knights and assassins' resting areas. At some point, 10 people had calmly appeared, all clad in large white gowns and wearing helmets. Only when this golden illumination shone upon them did the contestants and spectators take notice of them. Outside from the Alliance's great stadium, the people around the entrance of the Night Stadium realized immediately that these 10 were actually those ones they saw arrive after the rest. They were actually demon hunters, and not people from the Night Temple. Right, they were back after going through 4 years of secluded training. Bright Glimmer of Hope was back and standing there, about to take part in this temple's great gathering. Bright Glimmer of Hope. This name was obscure to the overwhelming majority of the crowd. To say nothing about the masses, even among the higher-ups of the 6 great temples, the ones aware of this name were just a few. Hearing Chen Zidian's announcement, the most shocked was the head of the Mage Temple, Li Jingji. Never did he expect Long Haochen to actually choose not to participate the temple's great gathering on the side of the Night Temple, but under his Demon Hunt Squad's name. Just what was he planning? Could it be that he really believed their nameless titled Demon Hunt Squad to be able to contend with the temples? Chen Zidian continued, I swear on my honor as a demon hunter that Bright Glimmer of Hope's participation won't give rise to any discrimination. May the ballot drawings start. 2 white glows abruptly appeared on top of the dome, and in the meantime, a multicolored light slowly shone upon the surroundings of the stadium, spreading a defensive barrier. This barrier was constructed through the work of a lot of powerhouses, and was able to even withstand divine tools or domains bombardment without getting destroyed. The main controller of the whole defensive barrier was Chen Zidian himself. 2 white rays flickered intensely, and the next moment, they suddenly stopped, and in 2 directions, each shone on a person. How coincidental, these 2 rays shone upon the Night Temple and Mage Temple's areas. 2 figures immediately came out, and got inside the great stadium. The first battle of the temple's great gathering would start, and the judges were all on the lounges. They only focused on maintaining the barrier, and had no specialist about to enter the stadium. How could the powerhouses able to participate in the temple's great gathering not be able to determine a winner by themselves? If the 2 parties really were extremely close in strength, Chen Zidian would be the one to personally determine a winner and a loser. Since there were a whole 190 contestants, they naturally wouldn't waste time, and the instant the contestants entered the field, the competition would start. Requiring at least the 8th step of cultivation, practitioners of weaker cultivation were already sorted out. So apart from the priest temple, none of the other 5 great temples would get any extra restriction or help. After entering the temple's great stadium, all participating knights had long since put away their armors, and were entering the field with only their bare fists. A small door would open itself for every selected candidate. As the first knight entered the stage, his back glinted with golden hexagram patterns, carrying a mighty roar as a glistening savage tiger came out. The figure of the knight flashed, placing himself on the tiger's back, and swiftly charged at the distant mage. That savage tiger had a pair of wings on its back, extending out over 5 meters, and had a bulky build. Opening its mouth agape, it launched a series of explosive projectiles at the mage. A holy saint tiger, magical beast of the 9th rank. Knights qualified to wear a golden foundation armor were all, without exception, excellent figures in the Night Temple. One of their great trumps was the strength of every such competitor. In the first match, the Night Temple was already showing great prospects. Their first knight on stage reached the peak of the 8th step in cultivation, at just 1 step from the 9th step. His opponent was a fire mage. Because no equipment could be used in the competition, the latter did not even have a magic staff. His right arm swiftly drew complex symbols in the emptiness, and with massive roars, a flame bear came out from there, shooting its paws to destroy the light projectiles, and rapidly strode towards the knight. This was not a summoner's summoning magic, because the resulting magical beast was an elemental beast condensed of fire. Elemental beast summon was a special capability usable in the 8th step. Capable of great bursts of power, the only shortcoming being the relatively high cost of spiritual energy. Sheltered from danger by the fire bear, that fire mage rapidly completed a chant. Even without support from equipment, that was a mage reaching the peak of the 8th step, able to launch powerful magic on the premise of spending enough time chanting. The mage made his move, standing on the side of the fire bear and holy saint tiger. That knight made an outstanding following move, not letting himself get entangled with the fire bear. He bowed toward the holy saint tiger's back, shooting forward the next instant. The golden spiritual wings on his back lit up, and in his right hand, a flashy holy sword took shape. Diving face down, it aimed straight at the mage, as the flame bear confronted the holy Saint Tiger. At the same level, a mage's offensive power was undoubtedly the greatest. So the first thing needed to defeat a mage would be to seal his magic, and to avoid by any means letting an all-out magic assault be carried out. Otherwise, one would hardly avoid getting defeated by the torrential magic attacks. The choice of the Saint Knight of the 8th step was undoubtedly the best, but the magic tutor of the 8th step was at no disadvantage either. A mighty holy sword came out, as his body suddenly turned illusory. At a lift of his right hand, pointed to the sky, the Knight of the 8th step met a flame-colored glint. Vulcan's finger. And in a situation with no boosting equipment at disposal. For him to unexpectedly launch such a powerful spell of the 8th step, so rapidly, was a shocking token of strength. The knight held a holy sword in both his hands, shining in a pure holy light, and giving him a sacred holy feel. He did not avoid, nor did he shrink down, but faced Vulcan's finger head-on. That's because this knight knew very well that should he retreat in defense, the following course of action would lock him into a passive position. At that point, making a comeback would be close to impossible. Gold and red intertwined in the air, the holy knight being completely shrouded in flaming light. No one could deny that the knight and mage had a gap in the offensive field. The former let out a groan, some traces of scorch remaining on his body. But although the knight suffered a loss in this clash, his goal was reached. Vulcan's finger was not enough to keep him away, and in a flash of golden light his speed went straight up, reaching the front of the mage in a split instant. That was the knight ability of the 8th step, lightning flash, as well as one of the most effective techniques against a mage. When used from such a distance, a mage would hardly block the incoming offense. Trial. The knight shouted out, a thunderous bellow shaking the whole stage. A pure white glow came out from nowhere, landing right onto the opposite mage. A brilliance surrounded the opposite mage, taking the shape of a crystal sculpture-like red barrier. Approached by the knight, this situation was visibly nothing a mage would wish to face. The magic tutor's right hand was stretched in front of his chest, executing a defensive spell resisting the might of light of trial. Then his right hand pushed forward, condensing a ball that came striking the holy knight. After reaching the 8th step of cultivation, a mage wouldn't be so weak in close quarters range anymore, because they had a lot of defensive measures, and even instant magic, at their disposal. In a prepared face-off, they did not stand no chance at all. But how could the holy knight let him draw back, after having finally drawn close, right in front of him? Stamping the ground with his right feet, he suddenly divided the holy sword in his hand in two. His body forcibly made way into those flames. A warped radiance lit up, dispersing the intense flames to all directions instantly. Elemental obliterating halo. Under consecutive attacks, this holy knight still managed to consecutively deploy light of trial and elemental obliterating halo. That was a real knight. Even without having reached the 9th step, how could he have so swiftly unleashed such powerful techniques? Right at this time, a victor seemed to have come out of the clash between the fire bear and holy sacred tiger. The fire bear being a type of summon in the end, although it held an advantage at the beginning, as its summoner was assailed under the frantic offense of the holy knight, he couldn't receive any command, and was in the end crushed by the holy Saint Tiger. The battle reached a white-hot state at this instant. The instant the holy knight fractured the flame cage, this match was already left without suspense. A blade storm abruptly shot forth, released by the two waved swords, and a huge golden projectile carrying a sword intent of incomparable might clashed against the defenses of the magic tutor, directly sending him flying. In the process of flying out, light of trial finally matched with blade storm to break past his defense. The battle is over. It's the knight's win. Return to your respective seats. Chen Zidian's August-filled voice reverberated. The mage did not sustain any wound, but had an awkward look. He indeed had just lost, because Bladestorm's true might didn't reside in its burst power, but in its absorption power and prolonged attacks. If this retribution knight hadn't been lenient, his life would have ended under Bladestorm's effect. A bright light had started shining upon the knight's shoulder at some point. The holy knight knocked his right fist on his chest and performed a knight salute toward the mage, before returning to his own seat. The Saint Magic tutor, having seen the shine on his shoulder, immediately came to the realization that his loss was no grievance at all. This guy actually had a light fairy. Seeing that fairy's volume, it should have evolved once. No wonder he could keep using knight abilities in such short succession. The first battle came to a closure, but the tournament did not stop at that at all. The previous two lights of selection returned in mid-air, and light flickered swiftly to choose the contestant for the second battle. Time pressed, so there was no affordable delay. The tournament naturally had to follow its course. The two opponents in this battle could see that the seat of the Saint Magic tutor had darkened a bit, showing his elimination from the knockout battles, while the Holy Knight had a bright shine appear above his head to indicate his victory in the first battle. The Alliance's great stadium was really miraculous. These fantastic scenes features were brought by many years of research by the Temple Alliance. The rest went even more intensely. Powerhouses from the 5 temples involved were illuminated in succession, and 7 battles went in the brink of an eye. Of the 5 great temples, the Knight Temple was the best ranked one yet, having had 3 people selected, all of whom had achieved victory. The Warrior Temple had the most participation yet, 5 matches, but 4 of them ended up in losses, making them a stepping stone for the other temples as of now. But this was just the beginning. As the individual battles involved 190 people, the first stage would need to have 95 matches going, and they were not at a 10th yet. The rest of the battles would only go even more intensely. The light of selection would try as far as possible to separate the 5 great temples, so to avoid forcing them into mutual destruction. The same would go for the individual competition, unless members of a certain temple would already be the large majority of the constituents in a certain stage. Matches between members of the same temple won't easily occur. The 8th round selection lights flickered, rapidly illuminating the Assassin Temple's camp, as well as accurately landing upon the camp of Bright Glimmer of Hope, picking the third one from the left among them. Because those from Bright Glimmer of Hope's side didn't have a reserved entrance, they had to pass through the gate of the Knight Temple to enter the stadium. The Assassin Temple's area was very close to the Knight Temple. Right upon entering the stage, the chosen assassin immediately entered the state of invisibility. In the 7 battles that had already gone on, the Knight Temple had achieved 3 victories, and the other 4 temples had achieved 1 victory each. Only, the Warrior Temple was in disadvantage due to having already had 5 people picked. This was the second contestant from the Assassin Temple, the previous one having achieved victory. This assassin powerhouse was really brimming with confidence. Before entering the stadium, that demon hunter from Bright Glimmer of Hope had to remove his gown, exposing his inner clothing, as well as proving he had no other piece of equipment. Seeing his looks, the masses from outside as well as the ones on stage all couldn't help but cry out in alarm, because this demon hunter from Bright Glimmer of Hope was really too young. This knight looked in his 30s, with bright eyes and a handsome, resolute face. Over half of the Golden Foundation knights from the Knight Temple recognized him. Seeing him appear, someone couldn't help but breathe out in low voice, "Wenjiao, that's Wenjiao." Wasn't he supposed to be missing for very long? So he actually became part of the demon hunt squad named Bright Glimmer of Hope. Right, the first one to take up weapons on Bright Glimmer of Hope's side was young Wenjiao. Compared to 4 years ago, he became far more steady. He originally had a steady, though arrogant to the bone, character. But right now, he appeared like a piece of jade, peaceful and gentle. Having none of his previous sharpness left, his steady atmosphere actually caused the Golden Foundation armored knights to exclaim in admiration. Straddling forward, young Wenjiao entered the stadium, and a miraculous scene followed, releasing a golden halation under his feet and outwards. Holy Mantle. Almost all knights recognized this ability. But Holy Mantle was really low-ranked amongst knight abilities. Did he actually really use it in the temple's great gathering? Being only 30 years old this year, young Wenjiao's participation in the great gathering was greatly shocking, but using this ability right, after coming up gave chills to the people from the Knight Temple. Although he was not standing for the Knight Temple right now, no one could deny that young Wenjiao was Yang Haohan's grandson. Because Yang Haohan already shouldered the burden of being the Alliance's head, he was unable to participate in this gathering. So in some sense, Yang Wenjiao was standing for his grandfather in the powerful knight's eyes. No matter with which status he would participate, the higher-ups from the Night Temple were naturally unwilling to see him lose. When Yang Wenjiao's holy mantle was released, they very rapidly realized that it wasn't that simple, because it was really released on an exaggeratedly massive scale. With Yang Wenjiao's body as center, holy mantle's bright shine spread outwards rapidly, and reached a diameter of 30 meters in the blink of an eye. In the meantime, Yang Wenjiao waved his hands on the two sides of his body, which radiated with two rays of light, and released two holy swords. These holy swords dispersed metallic glosses filled with the power of spiritual highland. But, spiritual highland, at the 8th step. And to condense spiritual highland into a blade would require one to reach the peak of the 8th step. And seeing Yang Wenjiao's relaxed look, his consumption seemed very little. A spotlessly white holy sword dispersed a thin golden color, as Yang Wenjiao's whole body went into a bizarre state. His right feet straddled forward, causing his body to float in mid-air, and a pair of wide golden spiritual wings spread out from his back. His eyes then lit up in red, slowly sweeping through the stadium. Such a young knight, at the peak of the 8th step of cultivation. Without a doubt, Yang Wenjiao's appearance shocked the whole audience, especially those from the other temples to whom he served as a great deterrent. Who said the Night Temple was getting senile? To nurture such a young saint knight, one may well imagine that before long, Yang Wenjiao would inevitably break through the 9th step, and maybe possibly become a divine knight of the younger generation. Holy Mantle's effects could be anticipated by any perspicacious person. It aimed at searching for traces of the assassin. After entering the state of invisibility, an assassin would immediately become visible after coming in contact with any trace of spiritual energy, and Yang Wenjiao's holy mantle reached such a scale that in case the assassin wanted to come over, he would certainly have the time to respond. Not only that, but the red light in Wenjiao's eyes was clearly a knight's lock ability. In a way, a knight is the nemesis of an assassin. In case he is locked by the knight, an assassin can then only choose to face him in a direct clash. That assassin was steady and experienced enough to show patience, and kept himself hidden rather than going on the offense. After the 6 stadiums were merged as one, the whole field became extremely wide. Although Yang Wenjiao's holy mantle reached a large scale, the ground extending in the stadium was really wide. So, in his view, as long as he would not take the initiative to attack the opponent, Yang Wenjiao would have no way to find him. Compared to his current state of invisibility, the simultaneous release of spiritual highland, holy mantle, and lock would surely make Yang Wenjiao's consumption of spiritual energy far higher. Maybe this battle would be prolonged, but the assassin emperor of the 8th step hidden in the darkness was certain to be able to achieve victory in this battle. Right as the assassin emperor was done thinking about his countermeasure, Yang Wenjiao made a move, silently standing there as an intense golden fog rose above his body. Storing power. Back then, quite a few people had suffered losses against Long Houchen's storing power ability at the time of the Demon Hunt selection. Yang Wenjiao just mechanically copied his strategy. But, perhaps only the others from Bright Glimmer of Hope understood his way of thinking. The other contestants did not understand why Yang Wenjiao would do such a thing. The storing power ability would certainly increase his offensive power to a great extent, but what's the use if no target can be found? Won't it only deplete his spiritual energy? Seated on a higher seat of the Night Temple's area, the corners of Long Qianying's mouth traced a thin smile. This kid Wenjiao has really been missing for too long, so a lot of people have already forgotten about his abilities of specialization. It looks that he will really give everyone a pleasant surprise. That assassin emperor facing Yang Wenjiao was also full of questions. This young knight is using storing power. Could it be to draw me out? That's just wishful thinking. Could it be that he doesn't understand that it's a battle of wits? How could such a mistake stand? The assassin emperor coldly remained hidden, and didn't even move an inch from his place of seclusion. He really wanted to see what Yang Wenjiao was planning to do after using this storing power. From the start of the individual battles, that was the first time such an awkward situation was taking place. But a lot of people understood that, in such a situation, the outcome would be decided right when one of them would make the first move. If Yang Wenjiao managed to find his opponent at his peak of the 8th step, and under the effects of storing power, that assassin also reaching the 8th step would be unable to avoid defeat. But conversely, if Yang Wenjiao couldn't make this move decisive, that would give the assassin emperor a chance to reduce his chances to naught. Yang Wenjiao's storing power didn't last for too long a time, and at some point a deep green gloss had appeared on his chest, only remaining indistinct under the concealment of his intense light elemental spiritual energy. It could only be found out under careful watch. After this green ray appeared, a bizarre green radiance was shot out from Yang Wenjiao's chest, emerging in front of him to sweep forward. To one's shock, this green light kept getting deeper and deeper even after reaching the defensive barrier of the Alliance's great stadium, without clashing at all with that defensive barrier. What's this ability? Did it really disregard the barrier? Very rapidly, everyone realized what this ability was. Long Haochen's storing power ended, and his body made a slight turn as the green radiance that came out from his chest swept through the whole battlefield. That concealed assassin was immediately lit in green light upon being scanned, and a red glint landed upon his body. It was a knight's lock. Flapping the wings on his back, Yang Wenjiao became like a golden lion, using lightning flash to hit head-on. When his powerful holy light illuminated that assassin, Yang Wenjiao's swords under the effects of spiritual highland aimed at the assassin's two sides, as he launched holy knock to knock the opponent ahead, clashing against the barrier before being knocked back. If the assassin had chosen to attack head-on, maybe he would have a chance, but after letting Yang Wenjiao complete such a storing power, those dual sword strikes would inevitably have caused death if they had struck. I have lost. Declaring these words with difficulty, this aged assassin emperor felt like pounding himself to death using tofu. Losing the battle was not shameful, but losing without even displaying any of his own strength was really a shameful thing. He had visibly been deceived by Yang Wenjiao's young age, and did not expect that Yang Wenjiao could maybe have a powerful spiritual stove with probing abilities. This was the spiritual stove that he had acquired after Long Haochen renounced it. Although this was not a spiritual stove with any attached offensive or defensive abilities, it was an innate nemesis for assassins. Yang Wenjiao had been relying on this spiritual stove back then to obtain quite considerable results. But what a shame that he finally had to meet with the dragon rider demon god. Since he was gone for such a long time, those remembering about such a spiritual stove under his possession were rarer and rarer. Even in the Night Temple, just a few still knew about it, to say nothing about this previous assassin. As the first competitor on Bright Glimmer of Hope's side, Yang Wenjiao's good beginning was appreciable. Seeing him withdraw from the field to return to Bright Glimmer of Hope's ranks, the corners of Li Jingji traced a downward arc. He understood very clearly that this Bright Glimmer of Hope team had already 2 knights in itself. Of course, he also knew about Yang Wenjiao, Yang Haohan's grandson. But in his eyes, this Wenjiao should be much more lacking than Long Haochen. If his strength already reached the peak level of the 8th step, then how about Long Haochen himself? Thinking to this point, Li Jingji couldn't help but shift his gaze at that leftmost person from Bright Glimmer of Hope. Although he couldn't see his face, he knew from the soft manners coming out from his body as well as Tan Wan's report that this one should be Long Haochen. His face trembling slightly, Li Jingji narrowed his eyes, thinking secretly, Long Haochen, let me see how far you will end up getting in this alliance's great gathering. He didn't believe that a demon hunt squad could possibly contend with temples in the gathering. Long Haochen didn't choose to return to the Night Temple. Could it be because he did not hope for his teammates to fight at their own temple side? Thinking to this point, Li Jingji didn't understand why Long Haochen would appear in such a manner in the temple's great gathering. But he understood clearly that now that Long Haochen was back after over 4 years, he would inevitably be his own greatest rival in the near future. Never did Li Jingji underestimate Long Haochen due to his young age. The contest kept going, and the various temples' strengths came on display. The most powerful ones were still the Night Temple, Mage Temple and Spiritual Temple, while the Warrior Temple and Assassin Temple were clearly quite weaker. Strangely, over a dozen consecutive matches went on without any of Bright Glimmer of Hope's people getting picked. That lasted until the 24th match, in which the light of selection fell upon one of the members of Bright Glimmer of Hope. This time, the light of selection landed on the tallest member of the team, Right at this time, a girl standing on the lounge of the warrior temple stood up suddenly, her hands shivering greatly out of excitement. The white-clad Feng Linger. As early as when Chen Zidian called the name of Bright Glimmer of Hope, Feng Linger felt as if struck by a thunderbolt from her lounge. Bright Glimmer of Hope, wasn't that their team? Having gone missing for over 4 years, this bastard finally decided to come back. This sudden news caused her brain to feel empty, as her eyes kept staring fixedly at the tallest of these demon hunters, that tall and robust man. Her eyes wavered, and tears kept flowing from the corners of her eyes. Yi Weiyang was seated beside Feng Linger. As they were the representatives of the Alliance's great auction house, they were naturally qualified to join this honored guest lounge. The words Bright Glimmer of Hope shocked her no less than Feng Linger, and right now she felt at a loss as for how to console Feng Linger, only tightly gripping her hand to console her warmly. Right now, that man lit by the light of selection had caused Feng Linger to shed countless tears over the past 4 years. She was unable to repress her inner feelings anymore, which is why she rose up. Yi Weiyang hurriedly held her in her arms. Linger, don't let your emotions take control of you. If that's really him, you will meet him sooner or later. Bastard. Bastard, Feng Linger's red lips were shivering. If not for Yi Weiyang's support, she was afraid she would have already collapsed. So he's back, it's him. She wasn't in control of her tears anymore, they were just like pears falling over her fair, beautiful face. Under Feng Linger and Yi Weiyang's attentive watch, that tall member of Bright Glimmer of Hope slowly strolled toward the entrance of the Night Temple, removing the large cloak from himself and revealing a smooth and flashy large bald head. Part